Good afternoon. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive, and welcome to our Westchester Weekly Update. Today is Monday, October 23rd, and I'm going to be joined in a few minutes by Deputy County Executive Ken Jenkins, and we're going to go over a number of different issues that are current for us right now in Westchester County. We're going to talk about lead paint. We'll give the update on some of the parks activities that are happening in Westchester County. And we're going to spend some time on early voting. The November election, which is scheduled for Tuesday, November 7th, that's 2 weeks away from tomorrow. The early voting for that election will begin this coming Saturday. So we're going to go over with you the hours, the locations for early voting, a little bit of the background of early voting, so that you have an opportunity to register your opinion. We'll also commemorate a very sad event that happened on this date 40 years ago. We'll save that for a little bit later in our conversation. We'll give you an update on the migrant report here in Westchester. It's pretty much static. And then just in general terms, we are working on the budget submission for 2024. As I've mentioned in the last couple of reports, Westchester County's budget operates on a calendar year, fiscal year. Calendar year begins January 1st. So we need to have a budget presented to the Board of Legislators by early November, and they have the opportunity to decide what amendments they want to make, changes, and so forth by roughly mid-December. And then we go through the final approval process and then have it in place for the 1st of January. Last week, we presented the first portion of that budget, our capital budget, for major improvements in facilities, county roads and bridges and so forth. The next major date for submission will be November 10th, and that will include the operating budget for Westchester County and then our special districts, refuse district, water district, sewer treatment districts. And so that will come up where we've had a public input session from the executive branch last week to get some public idea what some of the priorities are. We're having meetings. We've had one today. We have some tomorrow and the rest of the week with various entities to review the proposed budget. And as soon as we're ready to present it, we'll certainly have a major discussion about that. Budget season for any government is always the most intense time. You'll note that at the state government, they have an April 1st deadline for the budget, and they usually have lots of things happening in the month of March. The federal government has not adopted a federal budget in years. They operate on continuing resolutions, but when those come up, those are the difference of whether the government is going to shut down or not. They need to pass a resolution with a certain amount of resources in it to keep the federal government going. We operate in the county level, and I think the same way that the towns, cities, and villages do, with a lot more transparency and a lot more accuracy to plan. Villages, towns, cities, and some of the special districts don't have the luxury of having an unbalanced budget. We're all under the watchful eye of the state of New York. And villages, which operate a little bit different time frame, happen in the springtime. But for towns, for the 4 of our 6 major cities, and for the county, we have to hit it right around the holiday season and put it in place for the new year. So that's nothing we're going to report on in detail today. In the next couple of weeks, we'll come back and give you a full report on the budget as we submit it. But that is much of what's going on inside our executive branch and county government. I'll also mention that we were an active party in dealing with the landslide that occurred just the other day over on the Hudson Valley Line Railroad. It was north of the Phillips Manor Station, Sleepy Hollow, south of the Scarborough Station, and south of Ossining, and it knocked out all of the tracks for inbound and outbound transit on the Hudson Line. MTA got involved, cut off northbound traffic at Tarrytown, and Westchester County got involved with our Beeline bus system, provided buses to ferry people from the Tarrytown train station north to the Croton-Harmon station. Now, today, there's some limited service back open. I think they have one track open, and that makes it very difficult, but it's still open. And we're hopeful that issue will be resolved, if not today, tomorrow, very soon, to resume regular transit on the Hudson Line. But that was a phone call on Saturday that attracted instant attention, and we had to move and groove. And, of course, our credit to the MTA for the work they did, and also all of our first responders. They responded well. We were fortunate. There was no loss of life. There was no tragedy, but there could have easily been a tragedy. If a train had been there at the time that the landslide actually happened, it could have easily pushed the train into the Hudson River, which is a horrific thought. And that didn't happen, so we are grateful for that. Those are a couple of the immediate headline situations. Now, our guest municipal partner today is the mayor of the village of Rybrook, Jason Klein. Jason is well experienced in village affairs. He has been active on the Village Board of Trustees for 3 3-year terms as a trustee before he became mayor in the spring in April of 2022. Village elections in some villages occur in March, Rye Brook has a unique system. It's sort of replicated in Scarsdale and Pleasantville and Briarcliff Manor, which is a structural, nonpartisan system. So you don't run as a Democrat or Republican, and when you run in that cycle, you're also running for a position in public office that does not have a salary. So the mayor of Rye Brook, who's going to stand at this podium in a second, is not paid to be mayor of Rye Brook. And all of those years of service I've just alluded to, almost 11 years of service, no salary. And that is certainly noteworthy. I must tell you, when I first was in public office, I was a councilman in the city of Rye. The city of Rye has no compensation for their local elected officials, and that's true also in the village of Larchmont and in a few other jurisdictions as well. But nonetheless, for his voluntary service as a trustee, he became mayor. He certainly worked within this community of 10,000 people. It is a next-door community to where I live. I've represented this community in different other levels of government before I became county executive, and I must say that Rye Brook Village is one of those many communities we have in Westchester County that functions very, very well, but nonetheless, they have their issues. And so that's why the village board and the direction of the mayor tries to help manage it with the village administrator. So without any other further conversation, let me introduce the mayor of the village of Rye Brook, the Honorable Jason Klein. Mr. Mayor, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much. And yes, having grown up in Rye Brook, it was easy for me to volunteer there and help serve my community. And you mentioned the budget process. We actually get tomorrow night's village board meeting, we get an audit. So we listen to the audit. So we're excited about that. It usually comes back very clean, thanks to the hard work of our village administrator, Chris Bradbury. So again, I'm Jason Klein. I'm the mayor of the village of Rye Brook, and I'd like to thank the county executive for inviting me here to talk a little bit about Rye Brook and what we have going on. As the county executive mentioned, we're a community of just over 10,000 people located near Long Island Sound in Westchester County. We border Rye, Harrison, Portchester, and Greenwich, Connecticut, so we're fairly centrally located to many resources in other communities nearby. Our residents attend 2 school districts, the Blindbrook Schools and the Portchester Schools, and we have a vibrant downtown area with shopping centers with many types of retail. We're a mostly suburban community with a fairly diverse population. As with many other communities, we've recently been hit by flooding, especially along the 2 branches of the Blind Brook that flow through our community. Rye Brook has embarked on a number of mitigation projects to help address this flooding. As a first in Westchester County, we're working with the Natural Resource Conservation Service on a recovery program. This basically is a program whereby Rye Brook, using federal dollars, buys out homes that are located in flood-prone areas to allow those residents to move to other areas. The homes are valued at market value prior to the storm, which in this case would be Ida. And so the appraisal process for this has begun. So we've hired an appraiser who comes and sets a value on each of the homes. We've had 22 homeowners that have applied to be part of this program. And once the appraisal is done, they're given a price and they have the choice of accepting the appraised values. If accepted, the homes are purchased and removed, and the village owns the property, which will have deed restrictions on it so that there cannot be any future development. Aside from that, well, we hope it's successful and the properties are returned to floodplain, and so this creates a benefit for the houses in the immediate area as well as the houses downstream. We like to be good neighbors, thinking of communities downstream from us. Additionally, Rye Brook has been looking to address flooding in other ways. We've installed a flood warning system at a culvert at Brook and West Aves, which residents will soon be able to sign up for to receive alerts for rising waters. A project to move water storage underneath a raised ball field at Portchester Middle School is in design, with half the funding already having been approved by the Westchester County Legacy Funding Initiative. Rye Brook has a history also of adding affordable housing, and we continue to do so. 4 units have just been completed on North Ridge Street, and these add to existing units at Kingsfield, 10 units, Ellendale Ave, 4 units, Bow Ridge Common, 18 units, 32 units at Grand Street, and 14 units at 510 Westchester Ave. And we've approved other developments that are required to have an affordable component by village code. Rye Brook also continues to implement environmental initiatives. Recently, the village board approved new legislation imposing a seasonal ban on gas-powered leaf blowers. Our food compost program remains active, and the Village and Sustainability Committee have organized seed swaps, established pollinator pathways, and organized cleanups of our roadways. Actually, just this weekend. Rybrook continues to receive interest in development and commercial activities. We've approved a large senior housing development at 900 King Street. The Rye Ridge Shopping Center and Washington Park Shopping Center continue to thrive with a great mix of restaurants, shopping, and other retail and service businesses. We're also hoping that the two hotel properties in Rybrook that are currently closed will come up with future plans late in 2023 and into 2024. And of course, our fantastic staff in Rybrook continues to provide great services to our community, including a number of community events. Over the summer, we had some concert series in the park. We also just had a pumpkin patch, which unfortunately was rainy, but we had a steady flow of traffic throughout the day, which was great. On October 21st, just this past weekend, we had the Bowman Ave cleanup that I mentioned. We have a Halloween coming up on the 28th, as well as a trunk or treat program. On November 4th, we do another one of our community fit walks, which is very nice through a residential area. We also have a family mini golf that day. And on December 1st, we have our big winter fest at Pine Ridge Park. I want to again thank County Executive Latimer for inviting me to join him today, and we look forward to seeing everyone in Rybrook.
Thank you very much. Mayor Jason Klein, thank you very much for your service, and thank you very much for the partnership. We invite mayors and supervisors to join us each week for the program so they can talk a little bit about their communities. And as I've said many times, we have 45 of these communities all across the county. We want you to have a little bit of a flavor for what's happening. And it is essential for us to work together, village, town, city, and the county. We've tried very hard to do that over these 6 years in office, and I think we've done so reasonably successfully. So I'm going to invite Ken Jenkins to join me up here. We're going to go through a little bit of specific information. Ken and I will alternate it a little bit. But coming up, as I mentioned before, on Tuesday, November 7th, is the election day for the year 2023. So much of the dialogue in the society is about the 2024 election, when you elect the President of the United States here in New York State. A United States Senate seat is up, seats in the House of Representatives will be up, and the state legislature, both Senate and Assembly, will be on the ballot. But 23 is the year where you vote for local officials, and as county officials ourselves, we have been on the ballot in these odd-numbered years. We know that there isn't the same level of turnout because there isn't the same level of attention or interest, but it is the local governments that levy property taxes. It's the local governments that provide the basic services, police, fire, sanitation, snow removal, the kinds of things that you look at in the town, the village, or the city that you live in as your basic services. And when we talk about tax impact, and we will talk about the county tax impact, certainly your municipal taxes added to your county taxes represent about 1/3 of your property taxes. 2/3 of your property taxes are your school taxes. Those are decided in May with school budgets and school board trustees, and then also by the policies established in Albany. So while you may be interested in the federal government doesn't control your property taxes in hardly any appreciable way, shape, or form. So the elections that are coming up are important. Now, a couple of years ago, the state legislature authorized early voting. I believe the first year that it happened was 2020. It might have been 2019, but it's still a relatively new thing in New York. It's been established in the vast majority of other states, and the New York structure of it here in Westchester County has a certain amount of time frame, a certain amount of locations, some questions and answers, and we'll talk about people on the ballot. So Ken and I are going to divide that up. I'm going to start out by giving you the days for which early voting are coming, and early voting begins this Saturday, October 28th. Saturday, October 28th, and it goes for consecutive days until the following Sunday, November 5th. And there's a little bit of different times each day. It tries to accommodate some morning hours, some evening hours, midday hours, but it starts Saturday, October 28th, and early voting ends on Sunday, November 5th. There is no voting on Monday, November 6th, but then Election Day itself is Tuesday, November 7th. And so you have basically 3 ways that you can vote. You can vote by absentee ballot within the parameters of the law. You can vote at early voting, and you can also vote on Election Day itself in the traditional way. Now, in trying to make the times available for people, here's the structure that the Board of Elections has set up. On the Saturdays and Sundays of early voting, the hours are from 10 a.m. until 6 p.m. 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Saturdays and Sundays. That would be Saturday, October 28th, Sunday, October 29th, and then the following weekend, November 4th, and Sunday, November 5th. On those 4 days, the hours are 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. at the locations. Ken is going to cover the locations in a second. Then during the week, Monday through Friday, we have two patterns. On Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, voting starts at 8 a.m. in the morning and ends at 4 in the afternoon. That is Monday, October 30th, Wednesday, November 1st, and Friday, November 3rd. So Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, it's an 8 to 4 day. Tuesday and Thursday, and Tuesday being Halloween, October 31st, Thursday being November 2nd, it starts later in the day at noon and goes until 8 p.m. at night. This may seem exceptionally confusing, but if you look at it from a practical standpoint, you can vote on the weekend for the bulk of the day, 10 to 6. You go out, you do your chores, you go to the bank, you go to the post office, you grocery shop, and you can vote during that normal 10 to 6 time frame. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, do it before work at 8 o'clock in the morning. You could do it midday on any of these days, but it's an early afternoon on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. On Tuesday, it starts in the middle of the day, and it goes until 8 o'clock at night, so you can vote Tuesday night or Thursday night up until 8 o'clock. And at each of these different early voting locations. Now, you have normal voting precincts that you vote in, district locations where I vote at Rye Recreation Center in Rye. Ken votes in his location in Yonkers. For early voting, there are very specific locations, but you can vote at any of these locations anywhere in the county. So you may live in Rye and you work in White Plains. I can vote at the White Plains early voting spot. Or if I'm on business and I happen to be in another part of the county, there's an early voting site, then I can vote there. Anywhere in the county, they can produce the actual ballot that applies to us wherever our residence is. So Ken is going to go over a rather long list of early voting sites. There are 23 in this county, and you should keep in mind that many counties only have one early voting location at the Board of Elections. But Westchester County has tried to make it easy and available, and so these 23 sites, Ken will go over now. Make a note of any site that you hear that's in the community you live in or nearby the community you live in, because that's when you would be able to go for those hours that I've just mentioned. Ken.
All right, thanks a lot, George. And because here in Westchester County, we do things a little bit differently than everyone else. We're required, based on our size of populations, to only have 7 early voting centers. We have 23, but we actually added one more this year for this time, so now we have 24 early voting centers. So I'm going to start with the first one, which is the brand new location that's in the Croton Municipal Building in Croton on the Hudson, and certainly that's a new site. This is the first time it's going to be able to be utilized in this particular election. And then we have at the Eastchester Public Library, Greenberg Town Hall, the Hastings-on-Hudson Public Libraries, in Harrison at St. Gregory the Great Church, in the Mamaroneck Town Center, the Mount Kisco Public Library, the Mount Pleasant Community Center, that's in Valhalla, the Joseph G. Caputo Community Center in Ossining, Pound Ridge Townhouse, the Rybrook Firehouse, Somers Townhouse. That's in Somers Townhouse. That's actually, in Somers. We have Jefferson Village in Yorktown Heights. So Jefferson Village on Hill Boulevard in Yorktown Heights. We have the Yorktown Cultural Center on Commerce Street in Yorktown Heights. In Mount Vernon, we have the Dole Center, Mount Vernon City Hall. So 2 locations in the great city of Mount Vernon. In New Rochelle, a couple locations in New Rochelle. At the New Rochelle City Hall Annex, that's at the back in the basement, the City Hall Annex on Buford Place, and at the New Rochelle United Methodist Church on North Avenue, so on the north side and then right in the heart of the city. In Peekskill, 2 locations, the Peekskill Lincoln Depot Visitor Center, that's right next to the train station, or in the Peekskill Neighborhood Center, which is right connected to the library at 4 Nelson Avenue in Peekskill. Certainly, the county executive pointed out, Westchester County Board of Elections, that's on Quaropa Street here in White Plains, right across the street from the county office building. In Yonkers, we have 3 locations. In the Grinton Will Library, that's on Central Park Avenue. The Nodine Hill Community Center, which is up on the hill on Fillmore Street in Yonkers, or the Yonkers Riverfront Library right in Larkin Plaza in Yonkers. So that's all 24 of our locations that we have for early voting. It's certainly an opportunity, as County Executive pointed out. You can vote at any one of those early voting locations, be able to get the proper ballot face for your community. And again, take advantage of those times, whether you're working, going around and playing, going to your religious institutions, your faith-based institutions, Saturday, Sunday. There's no excuse for not being able to have an opportunity to vote. And remember, there's 24 different locations here in Westchester. That's you, Judge.
So you're going to find different races on the ballot depending on where you live in Westchester County. Well, let's just cover some of the major races that are happening countywide. First of all, it is not a ballot with a president, a governor, or a county executive on it, so you're already dealing with races that don't always get the highest of attention, although they're still important positions. We have at the top of the ballot judicial candidates that are competing. There are 4 seats for the Supreme Court 9th Judicial District. This is a state court bench, and the total jurisdiction that's involved is all of Westchester County, Putnam, Rockland, Dutchess, and Orange County. So it's a 5-county area. We have an innumerable number of judges who serve on this bench, and 4 positions will be elected out of the various candidates who are running. I believe there are 8 candidates running for 4 positions. Major parties have endorsed various candidates. Then you will see a single seat available on the county court bench, and that is a countywide race only, just Westchester County. The Supreme Court, which is not the Supreme Court in Washington, but the Supreme Court deals with a host of different civil matters. You might have a matrimonial case served before the Supreme Court. You would have certainly actions between 2 corporate entities would be in Supreme Court. You would find an election law case in the Supreme Court. In the county court, for which there's 1 judge, this is a criminal court. This is where individuals are prosecuted in a court action before the Supreme Court. You would have 2 litigants each represented by lawyers. In the county court situation, it is the district attorney or an assistant district attorney who is prosecuting someone who's accused of a crime. That makes it a criminal matter and a criminal proceeding. So you'll have 1 seat on the Westchester County Court. After that, you then have across Westchester County 17 districts for the Westchester County Board of Legislators. In Westchester County, we have single-member districts. That's not the case in other places, but here, each district has 1 individual. It's roughly about 55,000 people per district, and if you do the math, that roughly comes to the 1 million people that we have in Westchester County. And some of those communities are multiple in nature. Some of the districts are wholly within 1 community. Districts the size of Yonkers absorb a number of districts wholly, and then they have one that it shares with a neighboring community. The city of Mount Vernon has one that's wholly within Mount Vernon. You also have a couple of other examples where all of White Plains is in a single district and a few other things like that out there. There's no way to give you the full geography map. We have lived this experience. We were both county legislators prior to this, and we're both chair of the county legislature. But the county legislature, 17 seats, they're all up. They all serve 2 years in office, and they're on the ballot in 2023. And take the time. Get the League of Women Voters Voters Guide. You can find it online. Look for LWVW. I think it's .org. And you can download it, and certainly you can read the various media outlets, the weekly newspapers, the daily newspaper, that will give you information. You'll find information on the internet. Obviously be careful, because on the internet you have unsubstantiated information, and you may find a lot of information, some of which may not be true. But buyer beware, and you'll have a chance to find out who each of the different county legislators are. We are in a governmental role here. It is not our job to deliver political information. But, when we're out there in the community on our own, then we certainly, will dialogue as we see fit about the various candidates. You have local community judges that are elected in certain set locations. There are some cities that have elected city court judge races. There's a notable one in Ken's home community of Yonkers, where they have 3 candidates on the ballot for 2 positions. And then you also have some municipal town court races and potentially village court races, but you have to look in your different municipality. Probably the best thing to do is call your village clerk, your town clerk, or your city clerk in the community you live in. Call City Hall, Town Hall, Village Hall, and say, what races are on the ballot in my community? You could also call the Westchester County Board of Elections, and they'll be happy to lay it out for you as well. Either one of those should get you the accurate information you need. You can get a copy of a sample ballot and find out information. The Board of Elections does have a list of these candidates online. You have to look for it, go into Westchester's website, westchestergov.com, look under departments, click on Board of Elections, click on candidates for office, and and you'll see some of this information. But there are village elections in November. A number of villages have moved to November elections. Historically, we've had communities like Dobbs Ferry and Mamaroneck that moved to November a number of years ago. More recently, Hastings, Larchmont, and Tuckahoe have now had November village elections. They used to be in March, now they're in November. So in a number of communities in a village, you will go in this election and vote for mayor or village board of trustees, which is your council that governs your community. Towns, which generally have 2-year terms, there are a couple of exceptions out there, and cities usually have elections in every odd-numbered year, and so you will find that. You'll see the mayoralty of New Rochelle on the ballot, the mayoralty for Mount Vernon on the ballot, the mayoralty for Yonkers on the ballot, the 3 major cities, but there are also on the ballot races in Mount Kisco, in Peekskill, in Mamaroneck Village, and you'll see a race in a number of other different places, and depending on how many candidates are in the race and so forth, and then certain councilmanic races as well. There are a few basics in terms of early voting that we'll just touch on. First of all, you have to be a registered voter to vote at all. Vote early or absentee or on election day, but you still have to be registered to vote. You can register, and there's time for you to register. What I would suggest you do is do it right now. If you're watching this and you're not registered to vote, that you'd probably be a very small minority of people that are interested in this update. But the bottom line is you can get a form online in the same way that I just mentioned for the Westchester Board of Elections. You can fill out the form. You may have moved into Westchester recently, voted in another jurisdiction. You can fill out that form and you can submit it. You can submit it by mail as of today, October 23rd, but you're coming close to the deadline. If you're in White Plains, it might be wise for you to be sure and stop by 25 Quaropus Street in White Plains, right downtown here, and go in and hand it in yourself so that you know you've done. But you must be a registered voter to vote. As we've mentioned, early voting starts on Saturday, October 28th, and goes until Sunday, November 5th. Voting during early voting is exactly the same as voting on Election Day. You get the same form printed out. You black in the little circles that represent the candidates that you choose, and you'll either put it in a machine at the early voting site or, as you would on Election Day, into the machine there. If you vote during the early voting period, you're not eligible to vote on Election Day. There are no 2 votes going on. So you have the opportunity to vote early. If you choose not to use that option, you still have the Election Day option. There's also the option of absentee ballot voting. It's a little more complicated. You have to ask for an application, fill out the application request, then get the ballot, and then submit it. If for some reason, classic example, you're going to be traveling out of town on Election Day, and for some reason you can't vote early or you choose not to vote early, you can fill out an absentee ballot and you can drop it off at an early voting site. You can also vote early at that site, but it's a matter of preference. So whatever the circumstances are, there are some ways to operate. If you have questions, call the Board of Elections, and they'll be happy to help you out with them. The early voting votes that have come in will be canvassed, and they'll be reported at 9 o'clock on election night. So generally what happens on election night, when you look at the results, you will see a calculation done of everything that happened in the voting machines on that day, and these are separate machines. The early voting machines in those 23 locations are separated. They will have canvassed those by the time Tuesday night comes. So when the votes are counted, you will see the day of voting numbers come out, and you will see the early voting numbers come out. Now, absentee ballots can be received by the Board of Elections postmarked by Election Day, but they might come in a day or 2 later, so they don't count absentees at that moment. Generally speaking, if you watch News 12 local television station, they'll report a certain percentage of vote in, and they'll give you a number. And before the polls close, you're making estimates of what's going to happen. But once the polls close and they start showing you those numbers, you don't know until you see an aggregate how much of that is early voting numbers, how much of that is day of voting numbers. It's the 2 or 3 hours of unsurety until the numbers come in, and we've lived those hours in our past. But you can call the Board of Elections locally here at 995-5700. 995-5700. Ask 1,000 questions. You'll get 1,000 answers. This organization is specifically for the purpose of running elections. And they have heard every question you could possibly ask them. They've heard it before, and they'll give you an answer. If you want to call the New York State Board of Elections for some reason, you're welcome to do that. You're in a statewide pool of inquiries, so you might expect a little longer lag time. They're at 518 474-1953, and you'll get all the information that way. We'll mention these things again next week, and I gather the week after that, which is the day after early voting is over, but before the election itself. We'll run through some of these things again. However you vote, the most important thing is that you have your voice heard, because if you're an active citizen and if you like or you don't like the direction of government, you can express it on Facebook, on Twitter. You can, sit at a bar and have a couple of shots and complain about everybody. And all of that is your freedom as an American. You have the right to free speech and say whatever you want. But the most effective way to have your opinion expressed is when you vote. And when you don't vote, no matter what your opinion is, it's not registered in the in the final tally of who wins. And I will assure you, if a person wins with 51% of the vote, they get 100% of the authority to act. And then you will deal with government decisions being made by people that you did not participate in the selection of. So obviously, I've run for office many times, so as Ken. This is a process, not for everybody. A lot of people disdain it. It's entirely up to the individual, but this is your chance. You have this chance now. Early voting is coming up this Saturday, and regular voting to come after that. Next, I'm going to ask Ken to cover for us some information about lead paint and the recognition of our efforts to try to get lead paint remediated so that it doesn't serve as a source of poisoning our children or any other living beings.
Thanks so much, George. Certainly, in recognition of National Lead Poisoning Prevention Week, which runs from October 22nd, Sunday, October 22nd, to October 28th, this Saturday, the Westchester County Health Department is releasing a video that shows families how to keep their children safe from lead. Let's take a look at that video.
Hi, I'm Dr. Shirlita Amler, a pediatrician and the Commissioner of Health for Westchester County. Decades after lead was removed from gasoline and paint, children are still living in our county with the effects of this heavy metal poisoning. Unfortunately, lead has the ability to affect your child's IQ, and we all want our children to be able to do well in school, go to college, have a great job, and live a long and happy life. Unfortunately, lead can impact your child's ability to do that. Help us find ways to identify it and remove it from your child's home and your home.
More than 85% of the homes in Westchester County were built before 1978 when they banned lead paint. Chipping and peeling paint can have lead in it. Even homes that have been painted over can still contain lead paint under new layers of paint. The biggest source of lead paint in older homes is windows and porches. So when windows and doors open and close, it causes friction that makes lead dust, which then lands on the floor. Children crawl through it, they put their hands into their mouths, and that's how they ingest lead. Lead is sweet, so when children get a taste of it, they want more of it. Lead is also harmful to people who are pregnant or nursing. There is no safe amount of lead for a child. There are some objects in your home that you may not even realize have lead paint. So there's colorful clay pottery that people use to cook in, and the heat from the cooking and the acid from the food can pull the lead paint out. There are products from spices and seasonings and candy from out of the country that can contain lead. Antique china can contain lead, so you put a hot liquid in this with some lemon, the acid will pull the lead from the china. Makeup from out of the country can have lead in it. Older toys, antique toys, older painted toys can have lead in them. Colorful little pottery that children play with, if they put their mouth on this or touch it in their hands, they can get lead from that. And there's even some toys that may look very innocent, but if they have teeth marks in them, should be tested for lead because they can contain lead. Colorful bowls made from out of the country, the glaze will have lead in it. And this is an example of stained glass. The metal in the stained glass is lead. As this deteriorates, it causes a lead dust that falls onto the floor or the windowsill. A child touches it, puts their hands in their mouth, and they consume lead. Tap water is regulated to comply with state and federal regulations. However, some lines going into homes can contain lead, and if a home is older, there can be lead in the water lines in the home. So as a precaution, we recommend that you run your water every morning for at least 1 minute before using it, and only use cold water for brushing, drinking, cooking, and preparing formula. Your child's health care provider should do a lead risk assessment at every well visit from 6 months to 6 years. It's a few simple questions, and if you answer yes to any of the questions, your child should have a blood lead test. In New York State, blood tests are required at age 1 and 2 for lead. You should ask your doctor about these results. The single most important thing you can do is to wash your child's hands frequently. Most importantly, before eating and before going to bed when their hands are closest to their mouth and after playing. If you see any paint chips, you should clean them up with a damp paper towel instead of dry broom sweeping or vacuuming because that would spread the lead dust. Frequent cleaning of all the surfaces that your child can touch, such as windowsills, window wells, floorboards, and floors, should be done on a regular basis. If a pacifier, bottle, sippy cup, teething ring falls on the floor, it should be cleaned thoroughly before given back to the child. Toys should be wiped down on a regular basis and stuffed animals washed in the washing machine. We should only store food in glass containers or plastic or stainless steel, never in open cans or pottery. We want children to have a diet that is rich in iron, vitamin C, and calcium. These elements will help to combat the absorption of lead. While there is no cure for lead poisoning is 100% preventable. So if you would like more information about lead or you would like a free lead inspection, please call Westchester County Health Department's Childhood Lead Poisoning Prevention Program at 914-813-5240.
Let's keep everyone safe, especially our children.
We encourage all parents and caregivers to keep their children safe from lead, which can be found in painted surfaces in a number of Westchester homes. This informative video empowers parents and caregivers and explains how to help to identify and safely remove sources of lead to prevent further exposure. And this video is available on the Westchester County, westchestercountyny.gov or Westchester County, New York website. So, in addition, in recognition of National Lead Poisoning Prevention Week, the Westchester County Department of Planning is reminding residents in Westchester about the department's Lead Safe Westchester $4.1 million grant program. This program is aimed at enhancing the safety of paint hazards in homes built before 1978, and it's a silent threat that continues to affect households across the county. This program offers grants to address and repair lead-based paint hazards, ensuring homes meet modern safety standards. To apply for the Lead Safe Westchester grant or to request an application, please contact Kevin Thomas. He's at 914-995-4402 or via email at plan-lsw@westchestercountynewyork.gov. And again, this particular program, it's a grant program that is available for every Westchester County resident. Back to you, George.
As we rotate back and forth, let me give you a quick update on our migrant numbers. We're at a point now where there's been no real change in the amount of placements in Westchester County. So very similar to with what we did with COVID, as we were tracking COVID, we tracked it every week, we gave you an update, and there was really a minimal COVID impact. So we suspended giving a report, not because we don't want to be transparent, but because there really isn't anything new. And that is now the same situation that we're dealing with the migrant placements. We continue to have only 3 placements from New York City in Westchester County. You may remember this was a big issue back in May, and some of my colleagues in other counties are talking about an invasion and all of these kinds of things. Well, we have still the same 3 placements that we had back at that point in time, and we're now approaching a 6-month period in Yonkers and a 5-month period in both Ardsley and in White Plains. In White Plains, at the facility, the Courtyard Motel on Central Avenue, we have 20 rooms and 54 people housed there. There are 40 adults, 14 children. In the White Plains setting, 20 rooms. That is the totality of what that placement is. In Ardsley, there are 30 rooms, 57 adults, 15 children, and we're advised in both of those 2 locations that are managed by DocGo is that there are no children over the age of 5, therefore none that are requiring requiring education. We try to double check those numbers, but that's the numbers that are reported to us by the entity that New York City has contracted with to manage those locations. New York City continues to pay for the overnight accommodations and the food for those individuals. The Yonkers site is the larger of the three, and roughly is half of all of the individuals, slightly more than half of all the individuals who are here. They have a block of 93 rooms with 162 adults and 102 children. West Hab, based here in Westchester County, is the managing entity that New York is contracted with. They indicate as well all children are under the age of 5. We've heard different things over time, but this is the information we've gotten and verified from these individuals. So when you aggregate all of these numbers, we're still talking roughly about 400 people, give or take. No significant change in the number of individuals, no other placements in the county, and I think some of the rumors have started to die down. We've heard them, every time people turn around and say, oh, they're here and they're there and they're this and that. There are individuals who may be migrant asylum seekers who are living elsewhere in Westchester County. They're not here as a part of a placement. They're here because they have family members or they have found an apartment someplace that they can reside in and that they can gainfully pay for it. Those who are here as asylum seekers are here legally. We've covered that point before. Some people don't want to hear that. I understand they have opinions. But the fact of the matter is, if someone has come across the southern border, gone to the immigration authority, asked for asylum and registered, they now have the legal right to stay in the country until their case is heard. The system is clearly broken. It clearly needs federal action, but the structure as it is now allows individuals in that setting to be here in Westchester County and elsewhere in the country. And that's the numbers that we have as of today. We have had no incidents of crime, not one report of a crime, and no incidents of disease spread. Those are the two big impacts. People have speculated that these things would happen. They have not happened in Westchester County, and so we continue to try to manage it. As I said at the outset, back in May, our challenge is to see the issue in a managerial way and to manage it so that there are no negative outcomes. The policies about it are outside of our control. We have all argued for work waivers for all of these individuals. We're reaching the point at 5 months now, 6 months wait. So that issue, while it has not been resolved, will be resolved by time, and then some of these individuals will be able to legally work and pay taxes and so forth. And unfortunately, my call for a satellite immigration court in Westchester at the U.S. District Court, federal courthouse, to adjudicate the cases in Westchester so that we can move people out of this kind of a setting has fallen on deaf ears. And we keep trying, but at this stage of the game, there seems to be no movement in Washington. I suspect with what's happening in the Congress, where there is no speaker, we don't know how long it'll take for the majority to find a person that they can compromise and agree upon. Many things have come to a grinding halt. Certainly any chance to change this is also the case. I go back to Ken. He's going to go over something involving a recycling app, and then we've asked him to update, as he usually does, the parks activities that are coming up. Ken, back to you.
Thanks, George. So this is really exciting that Westchester County is launching the Recycle Coach mobile app. So the Westchester County Department of Environmental Facilities, DEF, has launched a free mobile app to help make recycling and solid waste information more accessible to our county residents and visitors. The app features a scanning function that uses image recognition technology to identify those items, and then residents will be able to use this app to scan an item in order to determine how best to recycle that item. This will help residents recycling and will allow for more informed purchasing decisions. The Recycle Coach app connects residents with the correct local recycling and disposal information, optional recycling event alerts, educational tools, and the tools to make those purchasing decisions to reduce their waste footprint. The app includes What Goes Where search tool with local disposal information and collection requirements for common and some uncommon items. It also has a scanning feature that lets you know whether the product packaging is recyclable prior to deciding on a purchase, empowering residents to be informed consumers. Users can access the Recycle Coach for free from their desktop computers as well as their mobile devices. The app can be downloaded from both the App Store or the Google Play Store. So for more information, please visit westchestergov.com/recycling or call 914-813-5425. The app will help you address something that the DEF folks commonly call wish cycling, where you look at something and you wish that it could be recycled and it cannot be for various sets of reasons, including leaving peanut butter in that Skippy jar when you're trying to recycle it. You got to clean it out, and the app will tell you that. Back to going to our nationally accredited award-winning park system with over 50 different locations at 18,000 acres. Starting tomorrow, Tuesday, continuing, that's the Gardening Tuesdays on October 24th from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. up at Lasden Park and Arboretum in Katona. So you'll get to enhance your gardening skills and your plant knowledge, working side by side with gardeners at Lasden Parks. The tasks include planting, watering, weeding, pruning, staking, deadheading, potting up, and much more. And this program every Tuesday goes right to November 26th. Right through November 26th, it's going to be a great time for Gardening Tuesdays at Lasden Park. On Saturday, right this time of the year, the leaves are turning colors, so we have wonderful leaves up at Lasden Park from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. on Saturday the 28th. This particular program is for children that are 2 to 8 years old. Parents must accompany their children, or guardians accompanying their children. You'll be able to take a walk through Lasden to see which leaves have and haven't fallen, and that's a free program, and it's going to repeat itself, not just on October 28th, again on November 4th. So register for that at lasdenpark.org, and we certainly will have that information up on the screen for you to participate. Remember, 2 to 8 years old. On Saturday the 28th, 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m., and then followed from 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. We're going to be, again, continuing up at Lasden Park with Make a Haunted Fairy House, where participants will be able to paint and decorate a recycled cardboard house to make their very own creepy house. And again, each child must be with a parent or a guardian, and you can get those details again at lasdenpark.org. Down in Yonkers at Lenoir Preserve, we have the Hawk Watch. That's the time of year that we get to see a lot of migrating birds to happen. It's going to be hosted by the Hudson River Audubon Society, and you're going to be behind the mansion at 10 a.m. and witness the amazing migration of some of our favorite hawks. At 1 p.m., join us at the Nature Center for a live Birds of Prey show with Master Falconer James Irving. Then at the Trailside Museum, also on Saturday in the afternoon, 1 p.m. to 8:30 p.m., and it's time for the Spooktacular Oktoberfest. That's going to happen at the Nature Museum at the Ward Pound Ridge Reservation. That's up in Cross River, and you get to dress up in your favorite Halloween costume to celebrate this bonanza. And from 1 to 6 p.m., kids of all ages can trick or treat, visit the Haunted Sugar Shack, pet animals, go on pony rides, grab snacks, and much more. The Oktoberfest area will be open from 1 p.m. to 8:30 and feature live music, some Captain Lawrence beer and a food truck, as well as a Bona Bona ice cream and more. And again, if it's raining on the 28th, we've only had 7 weekends in a row, County Executive, that the Saturday there's been rain. So if it rains on October 28th, the rain date is the very next day on October 29th. Learn more and register at the Spooktacular Oktoberfest tickets. That's also on the county website to be able to find those tickets. And finally, the Fall Freestyle Fall Harvest Concert. That's going to be at Westchester County Center. You'll see the lineup that's going to be there. 7 p.m. to 10 p.m., the Freestyle Fall Harvest Concert. Enjoy those tickets, and that's what's going on in our nationally accredited award-winning park system, George. There's just so much things going on, County Executive, and people get an opportunity to participate. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Ken. And that's really part of the good news that we have. We've talked a little bit, as we've said, about early voting coming up, an opportunity for you to have your voices heard, and then so many of these other things we're working on, the budget, and then the Parks Department really provides some of the most positive material. I do want to close, though, on a very sad note, and it's a note of remembrance, something that happened a number of years ago. And let me just frame it by saying that you may recall that during the summer, we had a rededication of plaques out at the parking lot that's in front of the Westchester County Center. And in it, we rededicated and replaced around the perimeter of that parking lot plaques that honored our war dead from World War I. Those men, those brave men who died during World War I, who were Westchester residents, died over 100 years ago. They made a sacrifice of their lives at a young age as members of the military. And we wanted to make sure that once we finished the COVID use of the county center, they had big tenting out there for potential usage as a field hospital, and then that was all deconstructed. We reestablished, with the state of New York, of course, the parking lot, and we replanted and rededicated all those plaques because we don't forget. The ultimate sacrifice of those individuals in World War I my grandparent level recognition, and for somebody that's out there today, probably 4 generations ago, a relative who died in World War I. We maintain that same sense that a sacrifice, and the ultimate sacrifice made by our veterans, are never to be forgotten. Now, we have Veterans Day coming up in November. We certainly think of our veterans and Gold Star mothers in September and Memorial Day. But today is a Remembrance Day of something that was very sobering. 40 years ago, 1983, there was an incident that happened in Beirut that we may have forgotten, but we should never forget. A group called Islamic Jihad claimed responsibility for bombing of the barracks that housed Marine members from the United States Marine Corps who were posted in Beirut, Lebanon, as a force to help stabilize a country that was going through a terrible civil war scenario. Caspar Weinberger, who was then the United States Secretary of Defense, said there was no particular knowledge of who did the bombing. Some analysts highlight the role of Iran and Hezbollah, calling it an Iranian operation from top to bottom, but there was no consensus. A large delivery truck drove up to the Beirut International Airport where the Marine barracks were located. They turned on an access road. They rushed through a barbed wire fence. And the driver of this truck passed between sentry posts, crashed through the gates, and detonated explosives with a power equal to more than 12,000 pounds of TNT. The explosion crumbled the 4-story building, and it crushed to death service members, U.S. Marines, while they were sleeping. This terrorist attack killed 220 Marines and 21 other U.S. service members who were stationed there to help keep the peace in a war-torn Lebanon. It was the bloodiest day in the history of the U.S. Marine Corps since World War II, when Marines fought to secure Iwo Jima. There's a local element to this as well. We lost 3 people that day. 40 years ago, they've been gone since their ultimate sacrifice, and I want to remember their names. U.S. Marine Corps Corporal James J. Jakowski of South Salem was killed in action that day. United States Marine Corps Corporal Bert Corcoran of Katona was killed in action in the Marine barracks that day. United States Marine Corps Corporal Craig Weish of Ossining, New York, was killed in action that day in the Marine barracks. We lost those 3 individuals and a total of 241 Americans that day to a terrorist act. 40 years ago today. Terrorism isn't something that happened yesterday. It would be foolish to think that terrorism will go away because we hope for some meeting of the minds that people will agree to. We lost these men 40 years ago. We ultimately lost Lebanon to become a haven for terrorists. Now Hezbollah controls Lebanon and continues to be a force in the Middle East, controlled by Iran, which continues to be a force. Iran took our hostages in 1979. That was well before this incident happened 40 years ago. That was 44 years ago. We live in a dangerous world. But my purpose as a county executive is not to talk about the international, or for that matter, the national implications of this. It's to remember 3 Westchester men. They were boys. They were young men. They grew up here in Westchester County. They played in the same streets and lots and playgrounds and ball fields that children play today. And they decided that they would serve their country by joining the Marines. And it's not easy to be in any of the armed forces, service branches, and it's even more difficult to be a Marine. The grueling process winnows out only to the best of those. And I have friends of mine, Jim Masano of our team, head of consumer protection, made it into U.S. Marines, and that is quite an important achievement. These 3 men from Westchester County died that day. They were sleeping. They were sleeping in their barracks. They were not in the field. They were not in a combat setting. They were there as a peacekeeping force. But the forces that did not want peace won that skirmish that day by killing those Americans. We remember them. We pray for them. Had they been alive today, they'd still be younger than I am, probably somewhere in their 60s, having enjoyed a full life. They died, I believe, before they had the chance to marry and have children and to have grandchildren, to be there for the graduation of a child, to see the birth of a grandchild. If they were Yankee fans, or Met fans, they missed achievements that would have come for sports teams that they rooted for. They missed the ability to spend a life with a person they loved. All of that was sacrificed sleeping in those barracks that day. And the least we can do is to remember them and to pray for them and to know that their sacrifice was not in vain, that the America that they stood for is an America that will stand up to terrorism in every turn, that America that will not be afraid, and that we will risk, all of us, the approbation of people that disagree with us and the yellings and the chantings, because we still stand for certain principles. And we're not perfect. None of us are perfect. This is not a perfect nation. We don't purport that. But when we deal with a country like Iran, which is one of the highest in the ranking lists of terrorist actions and of human rights violations, how can anybody put that on an even platform? Let us mourn once again James Jakowski of South Salem, Bert Corcoran of Katona, Craig Weish of Ossining. Let's remember those names, and they are at peace. We are not at peace. The Middle East is not at peace. But let us try to find a path to peace while we live so that we never have another act of terrorism. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.